Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Inside Nebraska podcast. This is another rapid recap video. It is Greg Smith, Senior Recruiting Analyst at Inside Nebraska, and Steve Marik, Inside Nebraska staff writer. And I am Zack Carpenter, the publisher of Inside Nebraska. It feels like I feel a little rusty because I haven't done one of these videos with you guys in a while.
Been with us.
I did a solo job out in Dublin. I was on my John McClane flow from Die Hard. That's any movie reference I say, Steve just gets it right.
Yes.
I don't know, man. You're always going over my head with those, but that's all right.
I was gonna say I always say it, and then like I said, we were soldiers reference yesterday, like a real deep
that was a good one.
And Steve like just starts laughing. I'm like, all right, I'm glad
that was a good one. I'm a movie guy, yes.
But anyway, we are here at Memorial Stadium. It's Thursday. Scott Frost wrapped up his Thursday lightning round press conference, the last media appearance for any Nebraska coach or player before Saturday's game against North Dakota. We just wanted to sort of take you through and recap the week, biggest points and maybe debates, if nothing else. I mean, we had a busy week where we met with Scott Frost on Tuesday, Eric Shenander, and then Quentin Newsome, Casey Thompson, and Caleb Tanner on Tuesday, and then Eric Shenander and Mark Whipple on Wednesday. I guess, Steve, I'll start with you. What was, I guess, just your number one biggest takeaway that you sort of caught your eye throughout the week?
Yeah, it was probably Mark Whipple. We talked to him yesterday, and he said the biggest thing for the offense going forward right now is finish. He said, this obviously coming off a game against Northwestern where they looked pretty good for 2.5 or 3 quarters, but then kind of bad in the final 15 minutes. The biggest thing with Mark Whipple is preaching finish. So obviously he said, he had kind of a good quote. He said, this isn't high school football where we're playing 12-minute quarters. This is big boy Power 5 football. We're playing 15-minute quarters. That's a 60-minute game. So they just need to play all 4 quarters. And obviously all the fans watched the game. It looked good for 2.5, 3 quarters, but not for the final 15. So that was the biggest thing that I took away, and I think it's kind of accurate. Nebraska's offense, I think, has a chance to be really good, but if they could just do that little extra, like Mark Whipple was talking about, I think it's gonna look really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much rehashing we need to do from the Northwestern game at this point. I mean, it's obviously very important still, but it's like we've gone over it and over it. I haven't talked about it with you guys like on camera yet and analyzed things, but it was interesting. Obviously, 2.5 quarters, like you said, they looked unstoppable, and it looked like, all right, new dawn of Nebraska. The offense looks smooth. I mean, yeah, the run game didn't get much going, but it still overall looked smooth. Casey Thompson looked great for that first.
He looked in control, which was awesome to see.
Yeah, Greg. I mean, with Casey this week, I know I wanted to talk about him a little bit, but just coming from that performance through today, what did you think of what the Nebraska leader of the program?
I thought that he struck an interesting tone because I think that as a new guy in the program, I think that he has a unique perspective as to what he's seen and experienced throughout his time in college football, and specifically not having been here at Nebraska for the previous losses, right? I think that that's important because you need multiple guys really on the team. It can't just be him that is not kind of stuck in this, oh no, here we go again mode. And I think that Casey is the perfect guy to kind of help at least to push them out of that, because it would be natural and normal for them to kind of feel that way going forward.
That's the number one thing that caught my eye this week, of just watching him again take the podium after the game. He was accountable, and this week he was too, and it's just interesting to hear. I mean, you get the sense that leadership that he is, that presence in the locker room. I mean, he was that way in front of the media, in front of the podium, and I mean that's something that this program desperately needs, is some positive thinking, because I know I've written about this before, and I was just telling you guys this earlier. It's that attitude. It's like a oh no, here we go again attitude that's just been plaguing this program for the last year.
It's a dark cloud that just hangs over.
And I mentioned this when I wrote in the preseason a 20 Thoughts on Nebraska. Was like, I related it to myself, but it was my junior season of basketball, we were terrible. Senior year, we get some young talent. We switched up personnel, we switched up strategy. Instead of slowing it down, grind it out basketball game, we would push the tempo. And in summer basketball, we were playing really, really well, so we were excited for the season that was about to come. In the first 5 games, we played really well. We lost every single one, and then we just completely did a 180 again, reverted back to that mentality, and we were terrible again my senior year because it was just like, oh no, here we go again, like nothing's going to go right. How do you guys think, what does it take then? This is a deeper question, but what do you think it takes for them to get out of that mentality?
Oh, I think they have to have one of those where, I'd hate to bring it up, but the onside kick situation happens, and instead of having Northwestern go down and score, they actually convert that 3rd and 10 that they did have them in, and get Northwestern off the field, and then go down and score to take a commanding lead, and then go on to win the game. It's going to take something like that for them to be able to kind of stem that tide. I don't think it's something that they can talk about. They just have to be able to go out and have those breaks go their way, or create their own breaks or luck, and take a game like that. Otherwise, it's going to just continue to snowball on them, in my opinion.
I agree. The time for talking is over. There's been so much talking about what can be done, and obviously it's just playing better in those situations. If the head coach calls an onside kick and doesn't get it, it's on the defense to go put out the fire, just like Eric Shenander said this week, which I thought was a really, really cool line. Shenander took a lot of shouldered a lot of the blame, I guess, for the way the defense played. But yeah, it's those moments where if you don't get the onside kick, send your defense out there to put out the fire, and that obviously didn't happen. So it's just performing when you need to perform, and that doesn't come from talking, that comes from doing. So.
And one more point on what you said, Greg, of they need to sort of stand tall, right? In one of those moments, like stopping them on 3rd and 10. It was interesting because I was messaging you guys during the game after the Isaiah Garcia Castaneda fumble. Nebraska stood tall. They forced the punt right after that.
Yep.
So the scoring opportunity was squandered, and that was a momentous turning point in the game. I think that, along with the onside kick and then Casey Thompson's first interception, those were the 3 biggest momentum turning plays in the game. But after that fumble, they stood tall, forced the punt, and I asked you guys, I'm like, would Nebraska's defense, would they have folded last year in that moment, or would they have stood their ground? And you guys were like, no, the defense usually. That was similar to what they would do last year. So it's like they had some of those moments in that game, just I guess not enough of them. So I'm not sure if on Saturday against North Dakota, FCS opponent, if we're really going to be able to take away much from the actual X's and O's standpoint.
Yep.
Unless, like I said, unless it's not a blowout.
Unless we get to that situation where you get those groans in the stadium.
It's what everybody was thinking last year against Buffalo. And Buffalo, there was a little bit of groans. It's like, come on, let's put it on these guys, and it didn't happen. And I think it was 28-3. Obviously, with North Dakota coming in here, you want to see a really clean game from the offense. You want to see a running game.
Another one, no penalties. The
Absolutely.
Thing that people kept saying, I felt like he was sneaky.
He was really proud of the no penalties on the offense.
I think we got to mention it because he mentioned
it. Which was good. Yeah, it is impressive. Obviously,
it was during the game. Yes. I can't remember at what point, but I did notice I think it was 1 or none penalties from Nebraska. I'm like, wow, all right. Well, I feel like I felt like they had at least a couple, but going back to the North Dakota game, obviously I think we all want to see a really clean game from the offense, some running attack, have that offensive line just get some confidence and move North Dakota's defensive line. Whatever the Fighting Hawks have coming on the defensive front, let's be like, okay, we are the Power 5 offensive line, they are the FCS defensive line, let's move them back and get some yards. So I'm really interested to see if that's going to happen, and along with just a bounce back performance from the defense. North Dakota brings back some returning guys on offense. 18 game, it will be 19 game starter at quarterback. A really good FCS transfer running back from Northern Iowa who's going to be getting a lot of carries, I think. 2 of the top returning receivers coming back. So, North Dakota's got some guys coming back, but obviously, you want to see a Power 5 defense shut these guys down and win big time. I think that's going to put a smile on a lot of people's faces if they do that. Yeah, and a little inside baseball behind the scenes here. If you want to know how Steve Marik works, he was telling me we were talking about the North Dakota and Georgia Southern game previews.
Yeah.
And I was like, you don't have to go all out and be as extensive as the Northwestern or any, like the Oklahoma or anything like that. He was like, no, I actually really I'm excited to write about North Dakota because they gave like 3 different bullet points of like guys he wanted to write about or like, storylines. I'm like, all right, man, you go for it. You know your
go check those previews out, man. If you haven't, Nebraska Rivals.com.
Yeah, North Dakota. North Dakota's got 6'5", 210-pound receiver Garrett Mag. I'm really excited to watch him. But anyway, let's move on from the North Dakota talk. All right.
Steve video on North Dakota.
Yes, we don't need that right now.
He would love that though. He would be all that. He could talk about North
You look happy right now. Like
they just have smiled all day. All right.
Yeah. I was gonna say if he could talk about the 3-4 defense and the run pass option against the Fighting Hawks defense, he would break it down for sure an hour if he could. But again, it is the first test since the loss or first game, even if it is against an FCS opponent. Greg, I mean, when we were watching the defense on Saturday, just tackle miscues, different. I think maybe it was angles was the issue, bad pursuit angles, but in general, that's obviously going to have to improve substantially on Saturday and going forward, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does, and that is the thing that really like caught my eye this week, and it's all the way back on Monday. Or caught my attention was Quentin Newsome mentioning the fact that they did not really tackle much, if at all, during fall camp, and that it was on purpose because the coaches wanted to keep guys' bodies fresh. And I think that where that most showed up in the game is exactly what you said about the angles, right? Because if you're tagging off all the time in practice, you're just naturally not used to going the full speed and going all the way through and tackling a ball carrier. And I think that tackling in the first game of the season is always a little bit of a work in progress, right? I think that anybody who watches football knows that. But what you saw from Nebraska, I think, was a different level of that. And so on one hand, I think that you can be encouraged that as the team gets more reps and gets more experience together and gets more live tackles, they should get better at it. But then you're a little bit discouraged because now it feels like Nebraska is already playing from behind as it relates to being able to catch up with game speed and tempo. As you know, you've got a couple of, I guess, lesser opponents in the next 2 weeks, but then it's time to go, right? And so will you be able to make that next adjustment by the time that Oklahoma comes to town? That whole subplot, and then, you know, the whole toughness thing, and I hate going there, but that's part of it, right? And that if you want to have a tough football team, you can't, like we've been talking about, you can't just talk about it. You have to practice it so it shows up in games. So I'm just fascinated by that whole situation about how they go about practice.
And Eric Shenander talked about that very problem. It's like, you know, we want to work on tackling, but the best way to do that is maybe go against the number one offense, those skill guys. But, you know, I think he said, you know, we'd all feel terrible if Trey Palmer got tackled and didn't get up, or Casey Thompson got tackled and didn't get up. So there's always that balance that you need to look for. But, you know, other programs across the nation do it.
But can I also say something about that, though? And this is, like, it's harsh, but it's not. It's a do or die situation. Scott Frost is using, I think, the last how many consecutive press conferences now that we're coaching for jobs, we understand what's at stake. You can't save people. You can't and no one wants to see anyone get hurt, but you just can't be like that if you want to have different results and try to overcome some of the things that have plagued you in the past on the field that reared its ugly head again in Ireland against Northwestern.
No fear of failure?
You got to do it.
Culture.
Where have we heard that before?
How many different buzzwords can we use?
Yeah, we've got 3 there.
I was going to say buy-in. Buy-in's the
buy-in.
That's a good one. I mean, back to that point, who was it, when we were at the first open practice? I can't remember who it was. A receiver got hurt because someone threw him to the ground, or tight end.
Omar Manning threw Chancellor Brewington to the ground.
That's what it was.
And Mickey Joseph went up to Omar. It's like, Omar, you can't be doing that.
Yeah, in part, though, too, in fairness to Mickey, though, that drill, it was just a little drill. It wasn't supposed to be all that. Like,
Omar went a little
like 11
high
on the
speed there.
Yeah. Which we should see him this weekend. According to Frost, he mentioned today that Omar Manning did practice all week. So maybe we'll see him this week after not seeing him last week in Ireland.
That's a perfect segue because I wanted to mention that of Omar. He's been light on, Scott Frost has been on concrete updates.
Details.
Omar, yeah, exactly. Also did say Travis Vokalek is day-to-day, and I asked, will he play on Saturday? And he said, I can't remember his exact phrase, but he didn't.
He's making strides. He's day-to-day. I think.
He just repeated himself, so.
So we'll see. Maybe a game time decision, or maybe hold him out for this game. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
it's an ankle injury. Those
Well, it'll
things
be
tend to
something
linger a little
we'll
bit.
have our eye on pregame down on the field when we see those guys down there.
And that'll be an interesting kind of situation. If Travis doesn't go, you're looking at maybe, I know Nate Borkacher was out there
Yeah.
in a lot of 2 tight end
Within some
sets.
key moments last
Yeah,
week.
for sure. Chancellor Brewington is a little bit of undersized tight end, but he's number 3 in the depth chart right now. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who, if Travis does not play, who gets the bulk of the reps. You know, because we know Nate Borkacher, a walk-on from Aurora. I think he's a talented guy. He's a receiving tight end, but he had one go through his hands against Northwestern.
Reps.
He needs to
Right,
play,
he needs reps.
absolutely.
He needs- Which,
Yeah.
on the glass half full side, if Vokalek doesn't go, getting Nate out there for an entire game would probably really
For
help
sure.
him in the long run.
Yes.
It's just incredible the difference between Vokalek and the other tight ends being on the field. I mean,
Yep.
that was my first Nebraska game covering it, and Vokalek had been talking. The hype was that he had been improving as a pass
Yes.
catcher all offseason after being a very good run blocker, and then boom, 5 targets, 5
He looked
catches,
really
security
good.
blanket.
He looked really
Two of-
good.
Two of the most impressive throws that Casey Thompson had in the game were to Vokalek on that. I think it's like a 15-yard gain or so across.
Right over the
field.
linebacker's
You saw
hand,
That too.
yes.
Yeah, that was incredible. Wasn't like incredible. It was like, yeah, your quarterback's supposed to do that at
Yeah.
Power
Yep.
5 level.
Make the
Yep.
routine
But it's
plays.
still
Do simple,
impressive.
yeah.
And then the first improvisational play,
Yep.
where the snap almost went over his head. Casey Thompson tapped it, did a little like 180 pirouette, and found rolled out and found Vokalek. So I think it's going to become pretty obvious. I think this season that Vokalek, he's looked at number 11 is looking for 83 and number 3.
Yes.
As his top 2 targets, because I think Trey Palmer had like 13 targets or something like that.
Early and often.
Yep. But as far as Vokalek goes and the rest of the team, they released the 2 deep depth chart for this week. The first official release of the depth chart. Is there anything that you guys took away, like 1 or 2 noteworthy things about that release?
All the oars at running back. I
Yeah.
think where there is no number 1 running back, and I think we'll still continue to see kind of the work in progress. Though I like a lot of what we saw from Anthony Grant in week 0 out in Ireland. I think that he's going to have to continue to battle for that, because I feel safe saying that we'll see more of Gabe Irvin Jr. and Ramir Johnson in the backfield this week.
And Brian Applewhite went on the radio last night and talked about his room's performance against Northwestern, and he was asked about Ramir Johnson and Gabe Irvin Jr. He said, "Yeah, we're going to see him." It was just the offensive staff apparently has just certain situations and certain packages where they want to use Ramir Johnson as sort of that new wide back role. Apparently, they didn't come up. Those situations did not come up in the game, and he wasn't used. He wasn't used out there. He was more of a special teams only player. With Gabe Irvin Jr., I don't know the situation there. He was just everybody was singing his praises in spring or the fall camp. He didn't compete in the spring, but just to not see him out there, very, very odd. But apparently he'll get some reps up here coming against the FCS opponent and then Georgia Southern in a couple weeks. So really kind of interesting to see how the running back room play out. But I'm with you. Anthony Grant showed really good stuff.
His best runs were
Yes.
all where he made someone miss, right?
And
or some of the sneaky.
the best
good
play
ones
was
were
that
third
first-
and 1 or
yeah,
3rd and 2
on
where
the
he
very
fought
first
and
drive.
got-
Well, that's going to wrap it up for us here at Inside Nebraska. We encourage you to subscribe to the site, nebraska.rivals.com, and the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. We'll be all over the game with game coverage on Saturday, and Greg will be all over another big recruiting weekend for Nebraska as an influx of targets are coming into Lincoln. So keep it right here and keep it on nebraska.rivals.com, and we will see you guys soon.